Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are
The,
the FAIRtax Guys.
yes, there it is. Big Fat Albert.
Yes, Fat Albert and your scrolling banner, which I think we told people, was it last week or week before, where they can get one? But in case they weren't paying attention, if you would like a scrolling banner, they're not very expensive, just a couple dollars. And you can get them at the FAIRtaxstore.org. And while you're at it, pick up some palm cards and some pre-made cards. That don't cost you anything, and help promote the FAIRtax. That works cool.
I think the fact that you can pick up those cards, the business size cards, which has the prebate information on it, and the palm card, which two-sided, it's a great card stock, no cost, even for shipping.
Yeah.
And you can be outfit with material that you can start, your own, FAIRtax contact with your friends, family, neighbor.
And when you go to a restaurant, just leave one with the tip there on the table.
That's right. That's all it takes. That's good.
That's all it takes. All right. Well, we are ready to rock and roll here on FAIRtax Power Radio. We've actually got something. It is really difficult. This is, if I'm remembering right, episode number 409. And when you've done that many episodes, it is really hard to come up with something new to talk about every week. But I think we have finally done it. We will be discussing something this week on FAIRtax Power Radio that, to the best of my recollection anyway, has never been mentioned on FAIRtax Power Radio before. And with that, I'm going to let you see if you can figure out what it is whilst we dig in to see what the Congress critters are doing to the tax code. And I will tell you that you will definitely find a theme in today's Congress.gov segment. See if you can figure out what it is. Okay.
Okay.
All right. We will start. Our first item up for bids is HR 7407, HR 7407, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to provide a credit to certain small employers for the startup costs of dependent care flexible spending plans. So this is Representative Adrian Smith of Nebraska wants to provide a credit to certain small employers for the startup cost of dependent care flexible spending plan. Whatever.
Certain.
Yes.
Small employers.
Now that one does not have your favorite "for other purposes" phrase on it.
But it could.
But it could. Okay,
Yeah.
here we go. Next one is HR 7400, 7400, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide individuals a refundable credit for a portion of federal income tax liability for 2024. There was no text in that, so I can't really see what this is all about. But this Representative Gabe Vasquez of New Mexico, he wants to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide individuals a refundable credit for a portion of federal income tax liability for 2024.
Yeah. And I think what happens is you have layer upon layer of bills or items in the tax code that have to be adjusted from time to time to create more confusion, which they appear to be very good at over there.
All right. Well, let's see if you can pick up the key word here in our series today. This is our next one, HR 7393, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a refundable credit for certain home accessibility improvements. That's Haley Stevens of Michigan.
Well, it sounds like it's refundable credits. That's kind of what
ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. That beats a Mariah Carey Christmas, by the way.
Oh, right. Yeah, no kidding. Oh, man. Well, I mean, but, you think about it, the tax code is there that just, it ain't for the weak of heart in terms of going through it. We have an opportunity to make the changes necessary by using the FAIRtax to eliminate the income tax, and all of these little tweaks every now and then to the tax code they go away. The tax code as we know it gets blown up, and in the hole that's left, the Internal Revenue Service is pushed into that hole with a giant bulldozer and covered up. And not
Yes, a lot.
the people in it, but the whole concept of the Internal Revenue
Yeah,
Services.
well, I'm going to take issue with your every now and then statement because as we are doing this, you put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes into the search function at the top of the Congress.gov page.
Yeah.
Look only at legislation in the current Congress, and every now and then returns 1,450 hits on that search as we're recording that thing. So it's a little bit more than every now and then. The
Right.
Congress critters are constantly monkeying with the tax code, most of which is at the behest of a lobbyist who wants to buy favorable tax treatment for his client or her client, whatever it is. And the tax code is just full of this kind of stuff that some people get it and other people don't. And they pick winners and losers, and some people get things and some people get penalties. And it's just crazy the way the income tax code is written by the people who can afford to buy themselves favorable tax treatment, and everybody else has to make up the difference. Why don't we throw that whole stinking mess out the window and replace the entire system with something that treats everybody the same?
Yep.
Absolutely the same. And
Absolutely.
it's impossible, almost impossible to evade as well, because the fair tax again will be included in the price of everything you buy at the store if you're purchasing retail services or new goods.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot more than just a little creative accounting on a tax return to cheat Uncle Sam. So that's one of the, and that's we're going to hit on that a little bit later here. But I got one more here in the Congress.gov. This is HR 7360 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to increase and make fully refundable the Child and Dependent Tax Care Credit, to increase the maximum amount excludable from gross income for employer-provided dependent care assistance. And there's your favorite phrase, for other purposes. This is Claudia Tenney from New York.
We'll have to send her a thank you note. I was beginning to think they'd forgotten about and for other purposes.
Oh, yes. But the key here is three of the four things we looked at. We're talking about refundable credits. And when you're talking about a refundable credit, that's really just a euphemism for a handout of some kind. If you get a credit, a credit against the tax you owe, if
Mm-hmm.
you owe, $1,000 in tax and somebody gives you a $2,000 tax credit, well, normally you would expect that 2,000 tax credit to just obliterate your tax obligation, cover your thousand, and so you end up owing nothing. But you make that $2,000 tax credit refundable, then it not only wipes out your $1,000 worth of tax liability, it gives you the other $1,000 in cash. It's just a way of handing people money. And our tax code is just loaded with this stuff, and it needs to go away in favor of the fair tax.
It's absolutely insane, to think that, and then what they're doing too is they're guiding people to act or do certain things in
Mm-hmm.
order, jumping through a hoop, if you will, to get that benefit. And it really is quite remarkable that they're able to just get away with that.
Yeah,
And,
but well, you hear people say, well, if you take away the refundable credit, if you take away the child tax credit, if you take away some of these things, then you're going to be hurting people. And so, well, there's nothing under the fair tax that says you can't reinstate those benefits. You'll just have to do it through a standalone bill that will be debated and will be in a bit more sunshine than burying it in the 70,000 pages of tax code.
that's right.
You can still accomplish what you're trying to do. You just have to do it in a little more honest and a little more straightforward manner by doing it in a dedicated bill. If you want to give money to a certain group for a certain purpose, then the fair tax does not stop you from doing that. It just makes you do it in the sunshine.
And right here at the top of the scrolling banner, simple, efficient, and visible.
Visible, absolutely. You see it.
Oh,
Remember we talked to Steve a couple of weeks ago about the hidden costs. Every time you buy something, make a retail purchase, you're paying somebody else's taxes and you don't really realize it because the cost of these taxes is just like any other cost of doing business. When you tax a business, whether you're talking about a mom and pop fruit stand or Exxon Mobil or Walmart, a business of any size, tax liability and the compliance costs that come with it are just costs of doing business. They get passed right on to the consumer. You and I pay it when we buy those things, but you don't see it on your receipt. With a fair tax, you will see every penny of federal tax you are paying when you make a retail purchase. So it's a lot more visible, a lot easier. It is a lot fairer because it treats everybody the same, not a bunch, no refundable tax credits against the fair tax, no loopholes, deductions, and stuff that the certain groups can use and other groups can't. It's just the fair tax is so aptly named. I love it. It was not, people might not know this, but the fair tax was not named the fair tax right out of the box. When
right.
when the business folks there in Houston commissioned their group of economists to design the best tax system that they possibly can, start with a clean sheet of paper, get me the same amount of money that the income tax is producing, but do it in the best possible, least adverse way you can. And what they came up with came to be known as the fair tax. But when they were describing that plan to somebody, the guy says, "Yeah, that's a fair tax." And the
The
name
rest,
fair tax stuck from that point forward.
yeah, the rest is history. And you talk to people, and this is another thing that you have to get into the details a little bit. When we talk about the fair tax, and then you hear people say flat tax, and there is still a little bit of confusion
Oh, mercy.
too in general conversation, or you just hear fair tax, or you
Yes.
speak flat tax, and
All right. Well, let's not go down that rat hole this
yeah,
time. Our time is getting away from us. We need to move on here, and
absolutely.
let's see if people have figured out what the one topic that we have never touched on in 409 episodes of FairTax Power Radio is. Would you like to render? Or I'll even do better. You know what it is, so I will let you go ahead and spill the beans. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, we always talk about computers taking over the world. There's sci-fi movies out there that provide entertainment, and here lately, a lot of the big companies are working on uh, artificial intelligence, where a computer
There you go. Got it.
learns.
Artificial intelligence.
The computer now is capable of learning based on experience in a short version of what is going on.
Yeah.
And chairman's report written back in, has this one been published? It has been, hasn't it?
Actually, it came out last Friday, the 23rd, and
Yeah.
this would actually every now and then Steve Hayes will give up his bully pulpit to a guest author, and Randy Fischer, AFFT board member Randy Fischer, actually wrote this. And he was thinking, all right, well, you mentioned that computers can simulate human intelligence. When I was a computer programmer for almost 30 years, I know the even the machines that are running artificial intelligence, they still have no emotions, they have no prejudices, they can't think and reason like humans. They can't, say I want to reach this conclusion and then build their case to support what their foregone conclusion is. That this artificial intelligence, as was described in this chairman's report, says it can generate content, keywords here, based on known data. And so Randy just decided he'd ask a rather famous artificial intelligence tool. I'm sure everybody has heard of ChatGPT. And
Yes.
you can actually carry on a bit of a conversation with this ChatGPT, even though you're actually talking to a computer. So Randy just asked the ChatGPT thing, but basically, what do you think of the fair tax? And the bulk of the answer that ChatGPT gave him is what was published in this chairman's report. If you don't get the chairman's report sent to your inbox every week, you can. You go to fairtax.org and sign up for FairTax Friday, or you can go to fairtax.org, look in the chairman's report archives, and read this one dated February 23rd. But it says, I love the first paragraph of what ChatGPT said. It says, the Fair Tax Act, officially known as H.R. 25, presents a compelling alternative to the current U.S. income and payroll tax system, boasting several strengths that could have far-reaching economic and social impacts. One of the primary advantages lies in its potential to significantly reduce illegal tax evasion. And the ChatGPT thing hit on that tax evasion several times throughout its analysis of the fair tax. But it's interesting that the point where we want to go here is that this is a machine that's not thinking; it's just looking at known data. And when you look at known data, it really struck me that ChatGPT never came up and never included any of the really off the wall, unfair, unfounded criticisms of the fair tax that we often hear from people who have a vested interest in keeping the income tax. I tell you what, there's an idea. Next week's Fair Tax Power Radio, let's look at some of the biggest lies that are told about the fair tax and refute those. But none of those things, none of the, it hurts the poor, it's regressive, it's going to add 23% to the cost of everything you buy. None of that stuff was in this ChatGPT analysis. And the second paragraph there is pretty good. Go ahead and read that one.
Firstly, the FAIRtax Act proposes a radical shift from the complex and often cumbersome income tax structure to a national sales tax on goods and services. This not only simplifies the tax system, but also minimizes opportunities for tax evasion. With income taxes, individuals and businesses can manipulate their reported earnings, exploit loopholes, and engage in various tax avoidance strategies. The fair tax, however, ensures a more transparent and difficult to evade tax collection process, contributing to increased compliance. So you pay tax with the fair tax when you buy a new good or service, when you buy something new. Used, no fair tax. It's already been paid.
But the ChatGPT goes on to say the economic effects of such a transition would be substantial. The simplification of the tax code would reduce the administrative burden on individuals and businesses, freeing up resources that could be redirected towards more productive endeavors, and the elimination of the income tax compliance costs and the streamlining of tax administration could stimulate economic growth, encouraging investment and job creation. And again, this is a computer taking a totally objective look at what the fair tax does without any of the prejudices and preconceived notions about the fair tax that our opponents sometimes throw in our face.
And there are challenges within the asking of a question with Chat GPT. You have to be aware of how you're wording as you would if you were just doing a common search somewhere. Because
I'm not sure exactly what Randy asked this ChatGPT, but it came back with a lot of the good points of the fair tax and none of the spurious arguments that we hear about it. It says this, and ChatGPT raises this as illegal immigration is another critical issue addressed by the fair tax. The introduction of a family consumption allowance, which is only available to legal U.S. residents, serves as a powerful incentive for individuals to comply with immigration laws. The provision not only promotes fairness, but also aligns with national interests in regulating immigration. Now, that's something that can be kind of a touchy subject for some people. But it is. I mean, you have to be a legal U.S. resident to get the rebate. Otherwise, you do pay the fair tax on everything you buy.
Right. International travelers, immigrants coming into the country that aren't fully vetted and in the system, end up with they end up paying the tax, but they don't get the benefit of the prebate,
Mm-hmm.
also known as the family consumption allowance. And the family consumption allowance is designed to alleviate the tax burden on lower income households, ensuring that essential goods and services remain affordable. Now, what we're reading is the response from a simple prompt that Randy Fischer put into Chat GPT back at the end of January. So,
Mm-hmm.
limiting the benefit to legal residents, the family consumption allowance, that is. The FAIRtax Act discourages illegal immigration by removing a significant economic incentive for undocumented individuals. This, in turn, contributes to a more controlled and regulated immigration system, which, of course, is a byproduct of the fair tax. And as we always say, we're just interested in changing the method of collecting revenue for the Treasury. We're all everything else that goes along with civil society. We're not necessarily part of the fair tax, but it's interesting that the artificial intelligence has gathered all of the information that it's found relative to the prompt that Randy used at Chat GPT, and we're coming up with some very positive, concise, positive remarks from the
Mm-hmm.
machine.
Yeah, ChatGPT says critics may argue that a consumption-based tax system disproportionately affects low-income individuals. However, the fair tax addresses this concern through the family consumption allowance, effectively shielding basic necessities from taxation. This targeted approach ensures that the tax burden falls more equitably across different income brackets while maintaining the overall simplicity and effectiveness of the system.
Yeah, and the Chat GPT concludes by saying the Fair Tax Act presents a compelling alternative to the current U.S. income and payroll tax system. Its strength lies in the simplification of the tax code, the promotion of economic growth through a consumption-based tax system, the reduction of illegal tax evasion, and the alignment with national immigration goals. While the transition to such a system would undoubtedly face challenges and necessitate careful implementation, the potential benefits for the economy, tax compliance, and immigration control make the Fair Tax Act a proposal worth serious consideration. It's interesting that the Chat GPT algorithm weeded out as a significant result of the Fair Tax Act is relates to immigration, as that is a consideration under a lot of scrutiny right now in the world and especially in our country.
Now, I think the fact that this is coming from a machine, an emotionless machine that is simply analyzing known data, and when the Chat GPT does not return any of the just really off the wall spurious arguments that are raised against the fair tax, I think it clearly shows that when you evaluate the fair tax strictly on its merits, keep the emotion out of it, keep the political objectives out of it,
Right.
evaluate the fair tax strictly on the merits of the plan, and you find out that when you do that, the fair tax is by far the superior system for funding the government. There's just no question about that at all. And I thought it was interesting also that ChatGPT did not mention that you'd never have to fill out a tax return again, that your personal financial data is no longer the government's business under the fair tax, and that it gets rid of withholding in the payroll taxes. It lets people bring home their entire paycheck without the federal withholding they see today. So purchasing power will go up dramatically under the
Yeah.
fair tax. But again, I think the most important thing is that it did not raise any of this other junk that we always hear. That we're going actually let's address that next week here on Fair Tax Power Radio. Some of the stuff
Yeah.
that people throw at us, so we can knock that out of the park. But again, when you evaluate the fair tax strictly on its merits, it is far far superior to the income tax and far, far superior to your buddy, the flat tax over there that people seem to think is one and the same with the fair tax, and it's not.
And I think as folks kind of begin to look at the fair tax more closely, under taking a moment with it, as opposed to just a cursory brushing that you hear something on the news or you read something, a first paragraph or something, that people are actually starting to really delve into what the fair tax is. I get a lot of questions, more specific questions here lately from people who have actually started digging in and looking at it at a more critical level, as opposed to just, okay, fair tax, flat tax. Yeah, it's 30%, 23%. It's going to cost, it's going to cost the poor a lot. It's going to be on top of the income tax. It's like a value added tax from Europe. I hear all of that. And now I'm hearing what exactly, how do I get money? How do I get my rebate? How does that work? So people are getting into the mechanics of that, of how it actually now.
Well, again, let me remind people that if you do not get the Fair Tax Friday, which includes the chairman's report, you can subscribe to that and have it sent to your inbox every week if you like, or you can still go up to fairtax.org and just read it out of the archive up there. But we do encourage people to go to fairtax.org. There is a lot of good information there if you want to educate yourself on what the fair tax is and how it works, looking at some of the stuff under the research tab. If you'd like to help out a little bit, you can join the 1040 Club, where you contribute $10.40 a month to Americans for Fair Taxation, so we can get rid of the Form 1040 and all of the schedules and other junk that goes with it. We would certainly appreciate that. And of course, we certainly appreciate people sharing these videos, telling their friends and family about Fair Tax Power Radio, and being with us every week. And that is going to wrap up this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. Be with us next week. We're going to swat down some of the biggest lies that people tell about the fair tax all the time. But until we meet again, thank you very much for watching and sharing. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the Fair Tax Guys, reminding you, as we always do, that the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what do you need from me to get these taxes collected?
Glad you asked, because there is a fair amount of information you need to be aware of.
That's your tax plan?
Oh, no, this is just the revisions for this year's tax plan. What I need from you is you need to keep track of all of your income, as well as any taxes that you've already paid. Also, any gifts that you received or gifts you've given to churches or charities or individuals throughout the entire year. Do you do any side jobs?
Every now and again.
Great, because there's some more information about that right here. Everything you need to know right here. So just simply compile that, send it in to us. Be careful, make sure there's no mistakes. If we do find mistakes were made, we can fine you or, throw you in jail. So you might want to be aware of that.
And what do you need from me?
As an individual, nothing. As a business owner, or if you're doing side jobs, yes, you would have to collect taxes on that, but,